Hello, everybody, and welcome to BreathTalks. And I am absolutely honored today to be speaking with Jim Morningstar. So Jim was around in the very early days of Rebirthing, and you were taught by Leonard, weren't you, Jim?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Right
yeah.
there.
And he had been studying psychology. And when he came about rebirthing, and he'll tell you more about this. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Jim Morningstar, who has such a wonderful, unique way of expressing breath work. Thank you, Jim.
Well, thank you so much, Ciara. It's truly a delight to be with you and your students today, because it's one of my favorite things in the world to share. Rebirthing, which became breathwork, and actually has been around on our planet forever. It's just that we now are rediscovering new ways to use the breath and facilitate one another in it. I like to say sometimes there is actually something new under the sun, because if you look at ancient hieroglyphs and things from recorded history, there's always a teacher. There's always someone who is a guru or someone above the others who is dispensing healing to people who are looking for it. But what we've discovered now is that there's not just one person in the country that we call Your Highness. We see Your Highness in everyone.
Yeah.
And so now we can bring that out, the healer in each of us, and help facilitate. And that doesn't mean to say that everyone has the same level of experience or skill in doing it, but we know that we can bring that out more and more so that people can be their own healers. People can tap inside, and we continue as a community to share the best. And as it's been shown over and over again, the intelligence of a community is much greater than any one individual. And so this is what we're taking advantage of now, because, well, with going on 8 trillion people in the world, 8 billion people in the world, it's time that we are helping one another.
Yeah.
And this started out very young for me, that I knew I wanted to work with and to help people. And I had somewhat of a scientific bent, but I knew that it had to be more involved with people than becoming an engineer. So I went into psychology because it had both the scientific aspect to it, but also the clinical part, which I more and more gravitated to. But I knew the importance, though, of doing research, of using whatever means we have in our left brain to help out the right brain, as it were, to be the whole person. And so I went into psychology and went through the whole gamut, all the way to being a PhD clinical psychologist. And 2 days after I got my degree, well, I said, that was it. I'm done. I'm not going to be a talking head in a cracker box working with people all the time. So my wife and I jumped on a plane, went to Africa. And it's like back to the roots. I knew I had to go into intensive psychoanalysis or to go to Africa. So we went to Africa because it felt more like getting back to the earth.
Yeah.
Getting into, and in the Sahara Desert in Africa, Bong, it came to me, it's time to truly get back to the earth. So when we came back to the United States, we planted gardens, we had huge, and we also brought back, though, some little friends, microbes, that people didn't know what were here in the Midwest. So rather than move to California, where it was all happening in the early 70s, we decided, okay, we're going to station ourselves here. And well, all of a sudden, community started to evolve. We started to meet like-minded people. We started to take courses in body-oriented work, such as bioenergetics, Gestalt. And in those days, that was relatively new, and it was being introduced into the field of counseling. And I said, okay, now this I can do. This I'm ready to dive into and work with people, because we can have our whole bodies involved.
Yeah.
The whole person is invited into the healing, because it isn't really a healing just to change your mind. It has to truly involve our body, our spirit.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I started taking these classes and doing my own work. I needed it. And then it was a natural to share it with others. And that's set me off right from the start, doing bioenergetic groups. And when I, doing Tai Chi, and when our Tai Chi teacher came to town and he said, well, I think you ought to check this rebirthing out with Leonard Orr. Okay, let's do it. So we had rebirthers come to Milwaukee, which is where I still live, and they brought rebirthing along with them. And when I experienced that, I said, okay, this is taking me right to the core. Yeah. This is something I absolutely want to share with the world. We had a house that we had other people living and staying with us, but we had a room in the attic dedicated to doing breath work. And well, miraculous things started to happen right away. I came home one day and there was this peculiar smell in the house. I said, what is this? And they said, well, someone was doing a breathwork session in the attic, and almost everyone, the breath worker and the attendants and all that, fellas were about to fall asleep. They didn't know what was happening.
Wow.
Well, it turned out that the woman who was being rebirthed at her birth had a bottle of chloroform break in the delivery room, and almost all of the attendants
oh my goodness,
passed out. And it's like, well, how could that be? Physiologically, is chloroform carried on? Well, we know that the patterns of that person's birth were carried with her, and she recreated them. And we saw this more and more. People would recreate even childhood diseases, measles, mumps, but it would go very quickly. And it was like the breath was there to help release things that were still held cellularly in people's bodies. So I thought, well, this is very interesting. I'll probably find new and better things. Well, it's been since 1976, and I haven't found anything that goes as deep or is more comprehensive than the breath.
Wow.
So we started forming communities. I lived actually in a urban ashram at the time.
Which one?
It was called abilitism at the time. Yogeshwar Muni was the head of that. He lived in California, of course, but we had a branch here in Milwaukee, and we would do enlightenment intensives, a lot of deep spiritual work. But now add breath work to that. And
yeah,
I believe breath work, and you asked about my style of breath work. Well, my style, Ciara, is inclusive. I like to teach the skill of breath work, but have people bring whatever other skills they have to the party, to be they body workers or chiropractors or psychic readers, or I haven't found anything that breath work doesn't enhance.
I totally agree with that. It really goes well with so much. I was once having a session where someone was also giving me reflexology, and it was wonderful.
Absolutely. We've had dentists that, because so many young people had trauma going to the dentist. And so dentists learned the breath work, and they would learn how to help people relax and get the work that they needed done without re-traumatizing them.
Wow. So
this continues in our school, even now. For certification, I accept credits, a certain amount of credits, from people taking courses elsewhere, other healing courses. But as we, in the beginning, as we started out, we found that breathwork heightened our states. It like gave us new awarenesses, but to actually change our life, we needed to increase our level of consciousness. And that is what community helps do.
Yeah.
It helps you bring it into every aspect of your life. And that's why I'm so happy when you invite me to talk to your community.
Because it's so important. And it's something that Leonard still instilled into his trainings, is it's not just about the breath. We want to help change and make the world a better place. And to do that, we have to do it in community.
Absolutely. And in fact, there was two branches of Leonard's work. One was the Rebirth International, which, by the way, his students are still carrying on with now. And the other was called Theta International, which was the community end of it. He started a program called the 1-year seminar. And this, people signed up for a year, and they would meet for an entire day, 12 hours, do breath work, and then study aspects of spiritual psychology, prosperity, all sorts of topics that help us change our consciousness and help create a different life on the planet. So I was one of the co-directors of Theta International, and we would set up tour routes for teachers who would travel on the West Coast or on the East Coast or through the Midwest. And back there, we didn't have the convenience of what we have now, the internet. So people had to hop on an airplane and go to another city, which I did for many, many years, and helped other people create these circuits so that organizers in various cities would set up their programs sequentially so that a teacher could follow through and go to many different cities teaching their specialty. Phil Lout was teaching prosperity. Leonard and others were teaching spiritual psychology. And after doing this for a number of years, I recognized, you know, Jim, it's time for you to start teaching. I had taught before, but not in terms of a whole spiritual program. And so we began teaching my version of the 1-year seminar called the Creative Life Series. And this Creative Life Series, again, had people meet once a month, and then in between do breath work. There would be a mid-month meeting just for breath work and discussing those topics. Well, after that went on for a year or so, people wanted more. So I said, okay, let's put together an entire program. So we would meet 7 times a month. we would meet for the Creative Life series, which was once a month. And then we met 3 Monday evenings a month and 3 Saturday mornings doing other work, Body Aliveness series, the core group, studying all aspects of raising consciousness. That created an entire 1-year program. After that year was over, people said, no, we don't want to stop. Let's do it again. And my response was, no way. To do it again would be to assume you didn't get it the first time. But what we will do is we'll create a second year, which is called spiritual leadership. Now it's not just about being a student. It is about demonstrating your leadership and taking it into the world. And so that was an 8-month program. The people still didn't want to stop.
No.
I said, okay, we'll create 1 more year, but then you're on your own because it's time for you to be the teacher in your community. So we did an apprenticeship program. So people learned actually how to create their own communities. And that went on for 33 years.
Wow.
Now I have stepped back from doing that intense of a teaching schedule, but there's one thing that I can't stop, and that is teaching breathwork.
Yeah. Once it's in your blood, that's it.
Right.
So Jim, did you ever get to Huracan?
No, a dear friend of ours, as a matter of fact, the first breath worker to come here, Diane Hinderman was her name.
Yeah.
And she was in our attic where she stayed with another breathworker who eventually was our Tai Chi teacher. And something happened that Fred, the Tai Chi teacher, all of a sudden just like went to sleep, and this person appears to her in our attic and says, come to Huracan. Where's Huracan? So, but it was truly a profound experience. She got her life in order, got on a plane, flew to India. At the airport, someone said, come with us. And they took her into the foothills, of course, of the Himalayas. And as soon as she got to Huracan, she recognized, oh, this was the person that appeared to me in Jim's attic. Now, ordinarily, Babaji's routine at that time was to let people stay there 2 or 3 days and then say, you go home. You know, that's where you belong. Do your sadhana there. And, but Diane, he kept there she stayed, wanted to, for 7 months, which for a foreigner was practically unheard of at the time. But stories would come back. And the stories that came back from her, from Huracan, always went straight to my heart. They were always something that was exactly what I needed right at that time. And of course, I was holding Babaji in my consciousness. And I would say, okay, is it time for me to come? Should I be doing this? No, you do your work there. So I still have that relationship with Babaji is, okay, you know, in the yogi tradition, there is the jnana, which is enlightenment through study and knowledge, the bhakti, enlightenment through devotion and heart-centered, and karma, which is enlightenment through works, through doing your life work. Well, we all have mixtures of all three of those, but certainly Babaji was the master of karma yoga. And he got people, that's what he said, go home and do your work. I mean, there were even stories where people would get up in the morning at Harakan and their assignment would be to carry the boulders across the river to the other side. And then they'd come back and the next day he said, now get them and bring them back to this side. Yeah. Like, what? So it wasn't what you were doing. The work you were doing is it was doing it with love, doing it with devotion.
Absolutely.
Doing it as a prayer. And so as we do all our life's work as a prayer, we're praying all the time.
Yeah.
And learning all the time. So it's not just about repeating. The rocks are teaching us. The river is teaching us. The air is teaching us. All of the elements are. So I still have a devotion to that way of life. That's why I'm still doing my work.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, Jim, a lot more men now do breath work than even when I started doing it. And I think a men's journey through the breath is different to a woman once we get birth out of the way, you know, other traumas in our life. And is there any wisdom that you can share about working from a male perspective and men's issues that will come up?
That's a great question. No one has ever asked me that before. I will say this, that I now, we're bringing breath work to many of the more cloistered countries in the Mideast, to Saudi Arabia, to, and all of the surrounding countries there. Almost all of the, of course, I'm doing this virtually, but almost all of our students there are women. Women take the leadership. Women have inclusive type of consciousness in which they are receiving all who are ready to learn and grow. And so then men get interested, I think after a while, where they see, okay, it's time for us to create structure. Time for us to, and in the metaphysical world, male is synonymous with steadiness, with being. And the female is representative of the flowing, the dance, and so the feminine energy is the flow of life. And the masculine energy is more of being. So let's build a temple. Let's build a...
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so men do need that time. Well, every man was at one point completely engulfed by feminine energy. So are women. We all came from the womb. And unless a man has created safety for himself, recreated the safe womb, then they're at odds. You know, they go about, well, let's see, what do men have different than women? Okay, we'll create long, pointy things that explode. Guns, rockets. We'll create skyscrapers. We'll create, you know, and so the travesty, though, is that they can convince women that these are the important things. Where would our world be today without guns and rockets? And well, I think eventually we see that, no, we don't need those to control society to control people. And so finding the animus and the anima, the yin and the yang, is a journey for men. And the breath work takes them out of their fixed identity. It takes them out of, so I've experienced myself in all sorts of ways, including as a woman, but as an animal, as parts of nature. Breath work opens the door for us to get out of our fixed identities. And now I personally have not felt called to do, quotes, men's work or just work with men, nor just women's work. I have liked the balance of yin and yang in all of our communities. In the beginning, indeed, they were mostly women. But towards the end of our school, after 33 years, there was an equal balance of men and women in all of the courses. But we had to make it safe enough for men to be vulnerable.
That is so important. Absolutely. Yeah. Making the space so safe that men can feel, okay, I can divulge.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so we're getting there. We're doing it. Even in the, as I saw breathwork being such a powerful tool over the years, I also see that, well, it's like nuclear energy. You know, you can power grids to create electricity and warm houses, and but you can also create nuclear bombs. You know, so it's a powerful energy, has to be consciously directed and controlled. And so when I first heard of the Global Inspiration Conference in 1976, I had that immediate calling, I'm going to be with breathworkers around the planet. And it was like coming home. Even though people spoke different languages. But again, there would be people using the breath, doing all sorts of wild and crazy things, not all of which seemed highly ethical. So I talked to some of the elders, people who had been doing it a while, and I said, you know, I think maybe we should pool our knowledge together and be able to set some guidelines for what will keep people safe, what will keep people operating ethically, and have a community of peers. So if someone starts to go off the rails, you know, we can say, hey, how about this? Let's look a little more closely at it. And so after several years, when I first brought the Global Inspiration Conference to the United States in 2001, we formed the International Breathwork Training Alliance. And 22 schools came together to create standards and ethics. As that evolved over the years, it became the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance, which is still in existence. And we are going through a growth spurt right now. There's over 25 schools around the world who are coming together and saying, it's better when we work together rather than each in their own silo.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm co-director of that, but I'm looking for more and more people to have input. And we're, like I said, we're right in the middle of restructuring it and opening it up.
Yeah. And this is what I want to be joining. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Ciara. But again, the leadership in the International Breathwork Foundation, a lot of strong women have taken leadership in that. And again, now there's more of a balance of men. It seems like the women have to create the safety first, and then the men can come in and discover their own vulnerability is their strength.
Yeah, that reminds me of in my vulnerability, my safety lies. I think that's the Course in Miracles. Yeah.
Yes. See, that's beautiful. The Course in Miracles is something I recommend to everyone. Mm-hmm. In particular, I think it is one of the best mind trainings. And that's because there's a lesson every day for a year. And training your mind to go to the highest thought every day of the year is, I think, one of the most powerful things you can do to have your mind become your servant rather than your master.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So should we open this up to see if other folks have questions or things that they would like to share?
Does anyone have a question for Jim or a comment?
Maybe we could just ask the question, what attracted you to breathwork?
Me? Wow, that's a story in itself, I could tell you. I was in Glastonbury in England, which is a very spiritual, energetic town. And I was in between working contracts. And at the time, I was sort of doing more shamanic work. And I tuned into my guides and asked them, what's my purpose of being here? And they said to me, you need to learn to breathe. And I'm like, what? I need to learn to breathe? Why do I need to learn to breathe? And I just went, oh yeah, whatever. And in Glastonbury, there's this free magazine every month with articles and what's going on. I opened it up and I saw Sondra Ray Liberation Breathing. And I was like, this is it. Okay, I see what you mean now. And that was it. You know, I went to the training and I connected with the breath and absolutely loved it. Mm. So I'd already been trained in, a spiritual type of hypnotherapy. And this added an extra dimension to that. And as you said, merging things is so important with breath work, because just the breath alone, you do need other tools to work alongside with it. So
yes.
Yeah. And I started doing a conversion degree in psychology. And I just went, this is rubbish compared to the experiences I'd had through other healing and more spiritual healing modalities. And I quit because I thought, especially child psychology, they were putting children into little enclosed rooms and observing them as if that they'll behave naturally. And having studied animal behavior in my science degree, that is like a no-no. Everything needs to be done in the natural environment. So yeah. So that was my introduction to breath work.
Oh, that's beautiful, Ciara. Yeah. It feels, I mean, even though I put out ads and do Facebook posts and that, it's not through advertisement. People are called to it. And you have to have the things out there. So I never twist anyone's arm or say, you've got to do breath work. I will tell them about it. And there are some people who will go, let's do it. Really? Yes, let's do it. I said, okay, you've been sent here to do this. And other people is, oh, that's nice. Yeah. So I believe there truly is a calling to work with something of that power.
It really is. I totally agree. Yes. Yentl, have you got a question for Jim?
Yes. What interested you or got you to breathwork?
For me, I have the feeling that it just came onto my way. I explained a bit in the beginning of our breathwork training with Ciara. I just started noticing this name of a place called Samothraki in Greece. And even before, it was something that just slipped into my mind. I don't know, and it always stayed there on the background. So I got a bit attracted to it, and then in the end I discovered that they were rebirthing breathwork retreats over there. But I got really attracted by the fact that I wanted to heal myself, because I really noticed, like, okay, I have certain behaviors that I can't seem to get rid of, or to work with. So yeah, I think it's about that got me attracted into to heal myself, basically. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Gentle, did you do some breath work before coming to the course? Or, I mean, did you experience one before, or you just came and did it?
If I look back at it throughout the years, so I know I told Ciara that right now it will be about a year ago that I started doing breathwork sessions with a therapist in Belgium. But she was practicing it, as I said to some others, she was doing it in a more soft way. Like, it was one session per month, and she was actually able to see the energetical cords, which are how to say, like on our bodies, on top of our bodies.
Beautiful story, isn't it? And it's so illustrative of how each person is led bit by bit. And the woman that combined her own psychic energies with breath work, again, is, I love those stories. And because she discovered that herself, that her ability to see energy cords and things were, when partnered with breath work, actually helped the healing process that was natural to her. Before that, it was beautiful.
Marian, have you got any questions or comments for Jim?
I was wondering, in your experience, what were your major blockages, like not only for the breath work, but also as a teacher in this process?
Okay. Well, I was raised in a relatively repressive religious atmosphere, and expression of feelings was not advocated in particular. Even feeling of joy, it was more, oh, hold it down. don't express too greatly. And so even though I loved breath work and it was very exciting, I had one particular blockage, which is that when I started breathing deeply, I would start to fade out. And I had literally, I would say, the best breath workers in the world at that time. None of them could keep me awake. So I decided that I would become, take training with one of the breath workers at that time, whose name was Bobby Birdsall, who was a very self-taught person. He raised himself in abandoned cars in New York City, never went past the 3rd grade, but taught himself music, painting, quite a rebel. He served time in prison. But when he found the breath, he knew that that was a teacher for him. And so he had a training on the East Coast. I signed up for it, and I was the only person. So I went there, Waterbury, Connecticut, and he got most of his clients in bars, or, you know, he was a real down-to-earth guy. So I stayed in the YMCA there, and he would take me around. And then he took me to his little house, and he said, okay, we're going to do a breathwork session. And he said, you go in the living room there. Yeah, you breathe. And he went in the kitchen and had lunch. I said, what? This is, you know, I traveled across the country, and the attention I'm going to get here. It's like, wow. You know what? It kept me awake. And I mean, this gentleman operated totally out of intuition. And I won't tell you all these stories because your mind wouldn't believe half of them, but he operated totally out, and I found out, yes, I was going to sleep on my own feelings, especially anger. So
wow.
This is finally getting around to Marianne's question. The blockage there was my freedom of expression. You know, I could be right and could think clearly and good, you know, but it was truly the vulnerability of admitting and living through my feelings. And so that took me on a whole another journey. And I believe each of us has our particular Achilles heel, or challenge that we are here to grow from. And I mean that we're here to grow from our challenges. And I think even on a soul level, we come into our life with that program. So people say, oh, I thought I worked on this issue already. It's here it comes again. I'm working. Well, no, it's not just you're stuck in a rut. That's a theme that you're working with. And each time you go around, you learn a little more. You go higher and deeper, higher and deeper. And so that became a particular interest of mine, was working with the developmental themes that happened in the early age. As I said, I got into bioenergetics, and bioenergetics was started by Alexander Lowen, who was a total student of the breath. But his wife was a physical therapist, and he came from, one of his teachers was Wilhelm Reich. So he was into body work, real strong body work. And he noticed that there are certain themes that everyone on the planet goes through. Am I safe? A theme right in utero. We're getting all sorts of things through the placenta, mother's nervousness, anxiety, anger, whatever it is. Am I safe enough to stay in the body? And in the first year of life, how much is there for me? Maybe I was welcome and wanted, but my parents are too busy taking care of their needs. And so I have to grow up quickly and take care of them. So in that first stage, it's like I developed psychic sensitive qualities in order to stay alive. I know where danger is, I don't go there. And I live mostly out of my body. In the second stage or theme, I become a caretaker. I'm very empathetic. Oh, mom's having a bad day. I won't cry. And maybe if I take care of her, maybe I'll be nurtured. Then I begin to crawl around. In the third 18 months, I begin to crawl and go independent into life. Is that a threat? Do I have to be controlled? I can either be controlled by overpowering, I'm the parent, and you will do what I say, or by seduction. Oh, you're afraid of the dark. Well, you better eat your green beans or you won't get a nightlight tonight. You know, it's like manipulated by my feelings. So I learned to rise above the feelings and be in control. That's that third inspirational leader type. Because now each of these types Each of these themes have an integrated or an unintegrated side. So an integrated psychic sensitive is an artist, is someone that, or a nuclear physicist. They use their mind and they use their talents magnificently. They still are, but they're integrated enough that they can share it with the world. The empathetic nurturing has that empathy, and who knows, he can become a breath worker. But he's not doing it out of fear in order to get his or her needs met. He's doing it with boundaries, knowing that the source is inside. So he doesn't have to overgive. Inspirational leader can be in politics or government or community. And if they can lead from the heart, they have an integration that one who just leads from fear and power, seduction, or overpowering doesn't have. Then I begin to develop a greater repertoire of feelings. And it's the fourth year of life. Psychoanalytically, you would say it's time when I have to learn how to control things, toilet training. I have to learn how to control.
Did this come out of Erickson's stages of development?
More the, yes, Erickson described all those stages and more beyond that. True. Mm-hmm. But then I start to learn a good me or a bad me, depending on what feelings are okay to express. And I can feel squashed and controlled by shame and guilt. But when I'm integrated in that fourth theme, then I'm a highly loyal person, and I'm not using indirect anger, sarcasm, and so on. I can directly set a boundary and be helpful to you. And I'm not the good me or the bad me, I'm the authentic me. And the next stage of life is gender identity. Is that something that is a threat? Am I allowed to find my own gender identity, or am I put into a box? So there again, those themes can either be integrated or unintegrated. And the final one is in the 6th year of life, when I am identified in a gender ways, can I have lasting intimacy in life? Or was I split between my heart and my genitals? And so I can, entire cultures are based on the Madonna prostitute syndrome. You can be sexually attracted to one person, but no, then the person you give your heart to is very different. Well, the integrated, energetic, grounded can have both. So that, you asked about my particular brand of breathwork. I introduce these themes and all of the exercises that go with them to help bust through the holding patterns. So that's my contribution. That's one of my contributions to breathwork.
Actually, one of your contributions is working with the divine child.
Oh, yes.
And acknowledging the divinity within us.
Yes. Yes. That is truly special. That's the heart of it. We all have heard of the inner child working with the wounded child. But there is, back beyond that, that source of innocence and purity before our story, before all of the wounding or whatever it is that we had in life. And connecting with that every day is a platform. I guess what I advocate to everyone is that daily practice. It's having some form,
Mm.
not a scripted one that works for me. I can tell you what works for me, but you have to find what works for you. And I say the same thing about breath work. I can't teach you breath work. I can set the stage for you to be introduced to breath, but it's you that finds that unique connection to make breath work yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to honor how you have followed your calling, Ciara. You've listened to and followed your calling, and you're opening that door to others, to so many others. So I feel a true kinship with you in that, and I'm so glad to talk to you.
I mean, I think it's so, and even when I was an environmental scientist, I'd look at a problem on a holistic way, look everything that interacts with it. And so this is how I am with the healing arts, is that you've got to understand a whole range of things to really get in there. And that's what I liked about you too. And I always tell students it's so important to go to different teachers and experience different methods.
Absolutely. That's in the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance. To be listed as a certified practitioner, you have to have learned from more than one teacher. Because our mind likes to latch onto things. You know, oh, Ciara's breathing that way. That's the way breathwork has to be. You know? So again, I acknowledge that you bring other teachers in and have people exposed to other ways of doing it.
Absolutely. Paula, do you have any questions?
I mean, I think that maybe, like, I mean, I think what you said, like the calling is true, like you don't know why, and you just feel like you want to do it. But I think like that's what you have, like you decide, I want to do this, but then there's the other part, like, can I do it? You know, like change your profession and like, will I be able to like live of this? You know what I mean? I mean, I feel like this is something I really want to do and I feel it, but then, and I guess like the fear and all of those things are part of the process, but for me, it's like, will I be able to do this my life? You know what I mean?
Exactly. I know very few people who are just breath workers. That's all that they do. So it's finding how to integrate it with your other skills, your other calling. And you don't have to jump off the end of the pier at once. Okay, quit everything and be a breath worker. Like that will cause you to not breathe so well. But community is really important here. And finding links and ways that you can work with others. And perhaps it becomes a part-time thing that you do to begin with. And then you might get other insights as to, oh, well, like I did, it's like rather than just have a couple of clients, put the clients together in a group and teach in a group. And then after a while, there may be other teachers that come in and you start to form a community. And so it can grow organically such that you are making a living using breath as a very important part of it. But yeah, again, our mind will say, well, I have to be like Ciara. That's what either that or nothing. It's like, no. Ciara had to find her own way and her number of skills that she put together. And so will you. But breath will guide you. Breath will guide you. So as you stay with it and use it every day and listen every day, go into the timeless place. The breath will take you out of time and out of mind. And there's where your guidance will be the strongest and will help lead you to the resources that are all around us that we don't see because our mind has tunnel vision. And there's a lot of programs like you're going to starve to death unless you work in a factory or unless you, and there's so many more ways. And the joy is the journey, not getting there to that end point. No, it's the journey. And I would guess that you've got pretty good instincts if you're working with Ciara.
And Paula is very gifted herself. So it's just getting that trust in you. And the breath will take you there. Yeah.
But I definitely feel like what you were talking about, the calling, like how things align for you to do it is, I mean, it's like when I first decided I wanted to do it, it was so strong in me. It was like super weird. I knew I had to do it. And I mean, it was something that was so sure for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we go through those periods of clarity and unclarity. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely part of the journey. Sometimes I go through several of those periods in a day. What am I doing here? What? But that's where faith comes in. There's a faith that is much stronger than our pea brains, who get scared, you know, and wants to take us down a dead end road, maybe.
So at the end of the day, Jim, sorry, this is quite a deep question, but after your many, many decades of experience, what is the meaning of this existence that we're in?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you the short answer. Yeah. It has to do with being love. Not having love, buying and selling love, thinking about love, but being the love that you are. And as I embrace that more and more fully, then I have guidance, then I have resources, then I'm creator. That's God's job description too. One of them is being creator. So all of our creative abilities will come into playing with others. And we're using breathwork to help wake the world up to that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Absolutely. And that's where the divine child bringing back the divine child is bringing back that innate love that's within us.
Yes. Right. Because we've become pretty good at giving. Leonard Orr once said, the world is full of great givers. It needs more receivers. Now, people who are willing to take in the love that surrounds us.
Yeah. So, fantastic. Well, that is a lovely way to sum it all up. And thank you so much, Jim, for joining us and speaking with us. We really appreciate it and everything that you've done to breathwork worldwide. Thank you.
Well, I feel like I'm in the company of my family here. Yeah. We have been drawn to do this at this time on the planet. So bless each of you. It was a pleasure to be with you. And I'm breathing with you.
Yay! Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.